Hey guys, Paul Rabelais here to address the sometimes confusing topic to many of can an irrevocable trust be changed or amended? It scares some people sometimes, but it may not need to. All trusts can either be classified as revocable trusts or irrevocable trusts, and by far, the most popular form of the revocable trust with an R is this avoid probate revocable living trust, where you stay in control of everything that you have, but when you pass away, nothing's frozen. The family doesn't have to go through attorney and court involvement to gain access to assets. So there's a lot written and said and videoed about revocable living trusts and avoiding probate. That's not the topic of this video. However, some trusts are what's called irrevocable trusts, and they're done for maybe several different reasons. Sometimes irrevocable trusts these days are done to avoid taxes. Sometimes they're done to avoid losing assets if you get sued. Sometimes people create irrevocable trusts because they worry that if they get sick and go into a nursing home, they'll lose everything they have, their home and life savings, because of the significant nursing home expenses. Those are all valid concerns. Now, the word irrevocable trust scares many people, but it may not need to. Somebody can establish, or you can establish an irrevocable trust, but you can reserve the right in that irrevocable trust to modify certain terms of the trust even after the trust is created. Let me give an example. Let's say we'll call a parent the settlor of a trust. Every trust has a settlor, and sometimes it's called a grantor or a trustor. I like the word settlor because I usually describe it as the person who set up the trust. So the parent is the settlor, and he wants to put assets in a trust, maybe cash or investments or real estate, really doesn't matter. And as he's creating that trust, working with an attorney, he says, well, I name X as the trustee of my trust. And X might be himself, it might be an adult child or children, might be another individual, might be a corporate trustee. And then he goes on in the trust to say that I name Y and Z as the principal beneficiaries of my trust. And then he goes on to state that when the settlor dies, the trust terminates and all trust assets at that time are to be dispersed to the principal beneficiaries. And maybe he even says that during the settlor's lifetime, the trustee has the ability or discretion to make distributions of trust assets to those principal beneficiaries. And then the irrevocable trust goes on to say a couple of other things. It says that, for example, in this irrevocable trust, it says that the settlor has the right to change who the trustee is. So now we've got an irrevocable trust with the settlor having the right to change the trustee. And maybe it goes on further to say that the settlor has the right to change who the principal beneficiaries are. So now we've got an irrevocable trust. Scary word, means you can't change anything. But within that irrevocable trust, the settlor has expressly reserved the right to change certain provisions of that trust. But there are still some provisions of that trust that the settlor cannot, under any circumstances, change or modify. Now, let me give you a little bit more background, because there's been a transition in irrevocable trusts over the last couple of decades. Back in the 90s, virtually every irrevocable trust, not every, but the significant percentage of irrevocable trusts were set up to help families avoid estate tax. Because back in the 90s and in the early 90s, the federal estate tax exemption was $600,000. So when someone died with assets in excess of $600,000 in value in their estate when they died, there'd be an estate tax of up to 55% of the value of the assets in excess of $600,000. So many people created irrevocable trusts in order to remove assets from their estate within the gift and estate tax guidelines. But as a result of that, the assets in their trust would not be subject to the 55% estate tax when they passed away. In those trusts that were designed to avoid estate tax, the settlor almost never reserved the right to modify or change any of those irrevocable trust provisions for fear that those assets would get clawed back into the taxable estate of the settlor, because those estate tax rules are very particular, and you have to really cut all ties to those assets that you put in trust. Today, however, with an estate tax exemption of $11.4 million per estate, and really with married couples and with something fairly new that we have called portability, it's pretty simple for married couples to exempt 2 times the estate tax exemption, or in today, $22.8 million. Married couples can have that large of an estate, and there'll be 0 estate tax. So we see very few irrevocable trusts being set up to avoid estate tax because people just don't have to get the assets out of the estate. So we're seeing irrevocable trusts for different reasons. Yes, we're seeing some irrevocable trusts being set up for tax purposes. We're seeing some irrevocable trusts set up so that people who fear that they will be sued and that a judgment will be rendered against them and they'll lose everything, sometimes they will transfer assets to an irrevocable trust. There's a whole body of work there that people need to understand. And then another reason people set up irrevocable trusts is because they fear that if they get sick and go into a nursing home, that they'll be forced to, spend their life savings and ultimately lose their home. So as long as those rules are followed and things are done timely, the right way, then people can protect what they have. But, really careful wording is necessary depending upon what your goals and your objectives are and what protections you need and what control you want to have over those assets once they're in that trust. So the summary is, yes, when someone is considering putting assets in an irrevocable trust, initially, that's a scary proposition because people think irrevocable, fixed, can't change it. If our circumstances or if we have emergencies or if something unforeseen happens, we're stuck with this irrevocable trust. But people need to understand the next point, that if they're careful and they do it right and they take advantage of the opportunities that they have, they can get some of the advantages of an irrevocable trust while maintaining some of the control by reserving that right to modify certain terms of that irrevocable trust, if the circumstances warrant it. So hope that helps. You've spent a long time earning and saving what you have. It's for many, it's time to get in that mode of merely protecting what you have from all of the influences and intrusions that are people risk losing what they have to. I'm Paul Rabelais. Hope that helps. Now you go out and have a great day.